Hello and welcome to the world-famous and award-winning Driving You Crazy podcast. This is the show where we talk about all things transportation, anything that gets you from here to there. I'm the traffic anchor and the transportation reporter for Denver 7 News, Jason Luber. You could contact me. I've had a couple of calls to the listener hotline at 303-832-0217. That number's in the description of the show. The last one was from a trucker when I had a news story. One of my latest ones was a news story about some guy. We have these express lanes in Denver, not just an HOV lane. It's an express lane. You're not supposed to weave in and out. And so this guy was in the express lane. Now, that doesn't mean that you can go a million miles an hour, but people like to go really fast. They think it is like how the left lane is fast. They want the express lane to be faster. Anyway, so this guy got behind a semi driver who was doing about the speed limit or a little lower than the speed limit, and he says everybody was sailing by him, so he's paying $3 or $4 or $5 in tolls to go slower than the regular traffic that was right next to him. And so he was mad about that, and he thought that semi-drivers shouldn't be allowed to be in the express lane, and they should be fined to oblivion and never be allowed in an express lane again. And so I had this, I did the whole story on TV. And then I had this guy call me, this listener, and he drives a truck all over the place. And he says, driving a truck, people forget what it's like to drive a truck. And I asked him, well, should truckers be in those express lanes? He goes, yeah, probably so, because it's actually should be more for semis than for anybody else, especially if these trucks are moving through a city. Let them move through as quickly as possible, get them out of the right lane where they're going to affect the drivers who are merging on and off the highway, and especially the drivers merging on the highway, where you're going to actually in a slow traffic in those areas. You could put them to the left, and they will just be sailing by and not be a factor to the commute, especially in the morning or afternoon commute. It's actually a better way to get everybody through the traffic faster. And I thought he made a great point. It would be faster. And there have been some states, I think Georgia was one of them, that were looking for truck-only lanes or truck-only highways that would keep the flow of the truckers going without having to deal with four-wheelers, as they call them. So I thought it was a pretty interesting take on that. Now, he said in general, if the driver is going to be going slower than the speed limit, probably best to stay out of the express lane, where all of these regular drivers want to go a million miles an hour. He says, and I've seen this often, they will stay in the right lane. Let's say there's multiple. Let's say there's 3 lanes. They like to tend to stay in the middle lane. That way they're continuing to go. They don't have to worry about people merging in and out. Typically, they'll stay in the right lane if there's only 2 lanes to a highway. But in those areas, they're probably more rural, and you don't have as many entrance and exit points as you do in a major city where you'll have more than just 2 lanes on a major interstate. So I thought all of that was fairly interesting from that one viewer who decided to give me a call on the listener hotline. And that's your cue to call the listener hotline at 303-832-0217. If you've ever been in a traumatic situation, you remember it. The experience can change your life forever. For many, being in a car crash is that traumatic experience. I still remember my first crash. It was 40 years ago. It happened when I drifted a bit into the left turn lane. There was a pickup truck waiting there to turn left, and I slammed on my brakes. I sheared off the entire top hood of the car, and I remember not wanting to drive again, but I also knew I had to move past it. But some people have a harder time than I did moving past something like that. Now, according to the American Psychological Association, car crashes are consistently cited as a leading cause of post-traumatic stress disorder in the general population. So, how do you deal with life after a crash? Well, I was contacted by someone to check out a book. It's titled Healing Behind the Wheel, Navigating Trauma-Informed Traffic Safety, and it's written by Janelle Lawrence, and I thought it would be an interesting and informative conversation. So I invited Janelle to be here on the show. Janelle, thanks so much for being here on the world-famous Driving You Crazy podcast.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
So I have a link to the book in the description of the show. So if somebody wants to find it, download it, that sort of thing, they can check it out there. Now, I downloaded the Kindle version for 99 cents. And what I was most impressed before reading through the book is that it has an impressive 4.9 rating out of 5 from 95 reviewers of the book. That has to make you feel great.
That does let me pat myself on the shoulder just a little bit that it's helping folks. So yes, I will take that.
Yeah, because not a lot of books have that kind of a rating and are doing that well. So and I think a majority of people over their driving life has had some kind of a crash, even if it was a minor bump in a parking lot or parallel parking or something like that. Have you been in a wreck?
Oh, I've had a few, yes. I have had those situations. I didn't have a terrible time recovering from that, but I have seen at my time with Oregon Impact, and we do the DUI victims impact panels, seen folks that have not been able to recover, or even first responders that saw something, or a witness to a crash that saw something they haven't been able to get over.
Yeah. And we're going to talk a lot about that. And as you mentioned, you are the executive director of a group called Oregon Impact, providing educational experiences to end impaired and distracted driving with an emphasis on teen drivers and those who ride with them. What has that work meant to you and to the volunteers that you're working with?
Well, the first year or two I was with Oregon Impact, we had 5 teens that died in crashes that summer. And that was a horrible record to have, very sad. It affected 4 different high schools. And I really saw what that did is it went out into the community and destroyed relationships and people, things you can't get over, who was driving and whose fault it was. And I just saw so many people not recover from these situations that's what motivated me to try to find ways to help.
Yeah, and I'm sure there is an age component to all of this, and we'll talk more about that coming up in just a little bit. But have you helped out with your experience there with Oregon Impact? Have you helped out other groups who are doing similar work to yours, either in your community or around the country?
Yeah, we have reached out to everyone we can think of to say that we have built these resources. They're not marketed to make money. They're marketed to get the word out. So we've distributed the resource to libraries for free. If somebody calls us or emails us, we'll send them a free paperback if that's what they'd like to have versus a digital download. So we're really want to work with as many groups as we can to get the word out.
And as I recall, the paperback wasn't that. I think it was $8 for the paperback. So it's not a lot. It's not a heavy lift right there. My guest is Janelle Lawrence, author of the book Healing Behind the Wheel: Navigating Trauma-Informed Traffic Safety. We're talking about how to deal with life after a crash. Is there something that happened to you, or a story that you were told, or an experience that you had that led you to write this book?
I think the one that was probably the most on my heart was a mom who lost her daughter. She was the party house. So that's where the kids went if they wanted to drink. And she lent her daughter the keys to her car to go pick up some more kids. The boyfriend grabbed the keys and he drove. He drove into a tree and killed her daughter.
Oh, wow.
So besides having to get over the fact that she was part of the problem, she's never recovered from losing her daughter. So she still just goes out and drives in the mall parking lots because that's where she used to go with her daughter. So she never has quite recovered from that. And so I was looking for ways, because I know she could actually cause a crash because she's really not paying attention when she's driving. She's still working on her own recovery, that maybe there was something outside the box, just not, go talk to a psychologist maybe, but some other ways that could be used. And she was kind of my starting point. And then the more I started looking, the more I saw. And something that I was told that's really stuck with me is your body will remember what your mind forgets.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So your feelings, you can push them down all you like, but your body will react the same as it did in that situation.
Yeah, you write in the book that a car crash, whether it's fatal or not, is traumatizing and leaves not just physical scars, but these more deeply emotional scars that can affect people for the rest of their life. So what are some of those signs that the people that are going through this might feel or see when they're in this process?
So what I have been told is they don't remember where they are. They don't know how they got there. They will react over and over and over to the same situation. So if they missed a stop sign maybe and got in a crash, they will try to stop multiple times to get to the stop sign. And now they're affecting everybody behind them because those people don't know what they're going to do. So they're acting outside the norm when they're in the car. They might be afraid to get back behind the wheel, and they might be a passenger that can cause issues with the driver, grabbing the wheel if they think something's going to happen, or making a gesture or a loud stop that's going to affect the driver that they're with.
And this could be months or years later, right, after the incident.
Right. Because your body's going to remember that.
Will other people around somebody who's been in that situation, friends and family, see changes in that person as well?
They might see them not wanting to go out, so they'd rather just stay home, and then be nervous about actually getting into the car. Maybe it takes them a little bit. So the more that you develop that group of people around you to support you is going to be really helpful. And it might be embarrassing to say you're afraid to get in a car again, but you have to have your support system to help you do that.
Yeah. And you write about that in your book, about that support system. So is there a way that people should approach someone who they think might need some help? Is there a certain way to do that?
A gentle approach, and just that I'm noticed that you might be a little nervous. How can I help? So you're not accusing them. You're just asking the question to see what you can do. And we have endless resources in our book to help. Every chapter's got multiple things that you can try to do to get yourself healthy, and people around you can know what that feels like, because maybe they haven't been in a crash and don't understand.
Right, and I think that's a big part of it. Yeah, in the end of the book, there are all these links, at least in, I know, my Kindle version, there are all these links that will take you directly to places that can help and get you some more information and clarify some of the things that you are writing in the book.
Right, exactly. We wanted to be able to have you pick it up, know you need it, and have everything you need to get where you're a better passenger or driver right there.
Yeah, and as I said, when I was in my crash, I was nervous about getting in the car again. Now, my 16-year-old daughter recently, within the last couple of months, she got into a very minor crash. She was not hurt, nor was the other driver, but she was shaken up and she was crying. Her 13-year-old sister was in the car with her in the passenger seat. And when I showed up and my wife showed up there to help out, I thought it was best, though, when we were done talking. I mean, there wasn't even really exchange of information. There was really no damage. So I thought it was, though, best for her to get back into the car and drive home. And maybe I thought about that because of how I felt after that first wreck. But mine was much more serious. I wasn't able to drive the car. Hers was, there was no danger of her driving. So I followed her. She followed my wife back to our home. And while she was still shaken up, I think it was still the best thing for her to get back in the car and get back behind the wheel and know that she can continue driving and not have to stop doing it right then, because I think if you get through that mental break, it can help you move past it maybe a little bit better. I don't know if that was a good decision or not, if you want to weigh in on that.
I would say that was a great choice. And especially when she had support around her to know, I'm sure you talked to her about, it's a crash. You're okay. That's what matters. Your family's here to help support you and get back in the car and get home. So I'm sure that was much appreciated and the best thing you could have done in that situation.
And we focus mostly on the people who are in the crash, the drivers, or maybe somebody who was driving the other car that was hit. But in that case, the passenger was my 13-year-old daughter, and she, I have noticed, has her own trauma right now. So she was mentioning to me the other day that while we're riding in the car, she goes, "Daddy, you might be a little bit too close to that, not following, but like we were stopped at the stop sign, and maybe I was creeping up a little bit." She goes, "Maybe you're creeping up a little bit too closely to that driver." And I was asking her about this, and she told me that now she said she's not scared, but just more aware of what's going on outside the car because she is pointing out more of my driving behavior and my wife's driving behavior while we're driving. That seems to be pretty, I would think that would be a normal reaction too for passengers who may be some of the forgotten victims of car crashes.
Right. Definitely passengers. She's going to remember that. She's going to remember her parents doing a good job and assisting her sister. She's my hero that she's kind of looking out and seeing what other people are doing that she feels like could be done a little better. So I think while I'm sorry she was in a crash, I think it'll make her a better driver when it's her turn because she's going to remember that and how that went.
But she also has a father. Both my daughters have a father. And my oldest has said, "Daddy, you majored in traffic, and so it's hard to live up to what you've done." I never majored in traffic, but I do know a lot about it.
Right. There you go. I hear the same thing.
My guest is Janelle Lawrence. She's the author of the book called Healing Behind the Wheel, Navigating Trauma-Informed Traffic Safety, talking about how to deal with life after a crash. Is there an age component to all of this? Do kids react differently than maybe just regular adults to young adults to older adults, during these instances or with crashes or the trauma related to it?
So the younger ones have a more emotional because it might be the first time they've ever been in a crash. I mean, if we were in a crash tomorrow, we're going great, time, insurance, filling out stuff, where they have a more emotional reaction, and it'll probably be on social media in about 30 seconds after it happens. And as we get older, we get calmer when those things happen. So it's not such an emotional reaction there, but it sure can be the next day. I mean, it might not be on site. Same for first responders. I mean, I can only imagine everything they see and how it really affects them. I've heard some stories from first responders about things they've never forgotten that they have seen. And it's not their family, but it was so taxing on them that they really still affects them.
And news reporters. I can tell you from all of the different car crashes, and when I was flying in the helicopter, I did that for 8 or 9 years, and I would see crash after crash after crash in the aftermath, and people hurt. We would average in news coverage, seeing fatal instances, whether they were shootings or other things, all the time. So it will last for, I covered Columbine, I covered a lot of different, very strong and impactful news stories that like the first responders, stick with you for a while.
Sure. We had a group ask if we could get some books for them for the folks that have to read all the crash data and put it in, that have to read about all these terrible traumatic crashes, and it affects them. They don't have a picture. They don't know who it is, but just reading the details can really affect them.
And so the techniques and strategies that you have in this book could be used for other tragedies as well. Because I was thinking about also those parents that were going through the loss of their children through the floods in Texas. They are still going through that right now, and they're trying to process all of that information. And so I would think some of those techniques that you have in the book would help out those folks as well as anybody going through some kind of a tragedy.
Absolutely, they can. And they're all proven strategic. We can't have enough, I think, coping strategies, so you can find the ones that you're willing to do. You might read some of these and go, "Oh, I'm not doing that." But, you also might find something that will work for you.
Right. For some of the victims, will they ever be, quote, normal again? Or do you just have to learn to live with the pain or live with the trauma post-crash, and that becomes your new normal? Is there a way to move past that, or is that just your new life?
Well, if you can use strategies to kind of overcome how you're feeling and what you saw, you definitely can get better. I've seen folks get better, but not dealing with it and just trying to push it down, eventually your body's going to say, not here.
Yeah.
You're not pushing it down here. I'm out of room. And it will react on you.
What are some of those strategies?
So some of the things that we talk about are the Safe Road Recovery Framework, which is detailed in the book. So it's specific steps you're going to go through. So we start there. So it's recognizing and validating that you have a trauma, and that's okay. And that's the first step. And that leads into going in deeper and deeper and deeper. And then I think we have over about 120 different resources to use after that, whether it's support group or counseling. Some people have used a deep tissue massage has worked for some people. Meditating. I mean, it's just everything across the board, but it's worked for somebody, and that's why it's in the book.
Do you have a favorite chapter that talks about some of those things?
I believe it's chapter 10 is my favorite one. And that starts, I'm not even going to look real quick. Yeah. So that's looking ahead a little bit and maintaining your momentum. So for getting better, that you just keep going, and that if there is an end result for you, you can say, this is what I'm trying to get to. I'm here. Now, how do I hang on to it? And there's a lot of resources in there to do that.
Yeah. When I was reading through the book, because you were talking in there about sometimes needing to make lifestyle adjustments. What kinds of lifestyle adjustments could help in moving forward?
So some might be the hour that you're driving or in the car. If your crash happened at 11 p.m., maybe you start driving again daytime only and you're home by dusk. So that doesn't come back in your mind that that's when my crash happened. Having different folks in the car. So I know I've had conversations with people going, oh, she's never riding with me again. Well, she didn't actually have anything to do with your crash, but up in here, It affects you. So trying something a little bit different. And for a lot of people, it's baby steps. You were able to get back in that truck and go. A lot of people can't get down the block and back. So it's just recognizing that that's okay. And there's a plan in the book for you to help you get better.
But I tend to, and probably most men are like this, tend not to share our feelings after a traumatic experience or a crash like this. We see it all the time with war veterans, and I'm sure it's helpful to have people support a victim. But do victims, especially reclusive men, need to be almost forced to share those feelings and be forced to be confronted with it and with what happened to be able to move forward?
It would help them get better. I mean, it really would. But I don't know a way to make men feel that way, that it's safe for them. I know it is, but I guess they could potentially reach out to someone that gives them a bad time. We're working on our next book. Something else was brought to our attention. The highest number of deaths from returning veterans is car crashes. Why?
Yeah, why?
We're going to find out.
Have you ever looked at any of the preliminary information on why?
No, we're going to find out, though. We're going to learn.
And what made you what made you think about adding to the book and exploring that part of what war veterans are going through and why they might be going into a crash?
So it was actually I was presenting the book at the Oregon branch of the drivers motor vehicles. And one of the folks at the table said, did you ever research about why our veterans that, this is the main cause of death? And I'm like, where did you hear that? And then I looked it up really quick and went, okay, it is. All right. Well, next up, then we're going to find out why.
Interesting.
So my first thought was, well, maybe they get to drive different on a base. So then when they come here, they don't have to drive like that. And that was quickly squashed to find out, oh, yes, they do. It could just be seatbelts, maybe. They don't necessarily have to wear them, depending on where they are, but they do have to abide by the traffic safety laws on the base. Okay, well, check that one off. We'll keep going.
Yeah. Yeah, that'll be some interesting research. And that is part of this, where any type of trauma, PTSD, it can come from a crash, can come from wartime, can come from a lot of traumatic experiences that we talked about. Do you think some of the PTSD someone might experience is dependent on the way each person deals with life in general? Some people tend to hold on to feelings more than others. So for some people, it's no big deal to see war or to be in a crash. It's just, whatever. And they just go on with their lives. Can the people who tend to hold on to their feelings learn to be more like those people who can just easily move on?
I think a lot depends on your psyche and what you're used to seeing. Our kids see crashes on video games and movies, and they really don't react so much anymore. They've seen a lot of it, but actually seeing a crash on site is a very different situation. There's sights and sounds and smells and things that are very different. And I think if people hold on to those things that they saw in a real crash, that those are really hard to get rid of.
It was like the talk of the video game Doom back in the Columbine days, or Grand Theft Auto now, or Call of Duty, where the kids are playing these games and don't really think of carjacking or running somebody over or shooting them with, a machine gun in a war-type situation video game is all that big of a deal.
Yeah, we've found that we have a 28-foot glass trailer. We take it out. We have two. One has the first cannabis crash that was a fatality when Oregon changed the laws and made cannabis legal. And the other one's a DUI crash. And we just set them out and we walk away. And we found that's the best thing for parents to talk to their kids, because that car looks very different than what they're used to seeing. And they're pretty shocked that, the new drivers and the younger kids are. But their parents do a great job of explaining, this is a mistake I made when I was first driving. This is what I did. And it's really brought about a lot of conversations. And those travel all over the state all year long. And they just sit and kind of work their magic on their own, that parents have an opportunity to talk to their kids, and it's not like a game or TV. This is what it really looks like.
Yeah. A lot of states now have legal or at least medical recreational marijuana available. So there are the problems with not only that, but obviously with alcohol. And you've seen that with your work with Oregon Impact. I would also think that there's a difference in the way somebody might handle a alcohol/impaired driving crash differently, whether you are, let's say somebody was very drunk and caused a crash where they hit somebody else. If they hit a tree, then they're, hurting the tree, and the tree, I think, is not going to be psychologically damaged. But right. But if you hit somebody else, then you really have two separate styles of victim there. One, somebody who was hit by an impaired driver. They have to go through those issues where they were hurt or emotionally hurt. But then you have the alcohol victim who might not care as much because the alcohol or the marijuana or whatever the impairment might have deadened their feelings going forward, where it's, either not that big of a deal or they just process it differently than somebody that was hit.
From my experience, the drivers that are DUI drivers that don't get it the first time, there's a second time.
Yeah.
And they're back. Some of them it takes 2 or 3 times. We have a speaker that goes around and talks for us, and he didn't get it till his third crash, lost everything, lost his family. He coded several times on the way to the hospital, and he didn't get it till the third time. And now he goes out and he's a speaker and talks to people about what it took for him to realize that he was hurting other people, because his argument with himself was, I'm only doing this to me.
Mm-hmm.
If I want to drink, I'm going to drink. And he did not hurt anybody on his crash. He hit a wall, but it was the third one for him. So
has that been your experience working with alcohol and impaired drivers? Is that it takes them several times to figure it out? Because sometimes, like in his case, if he heard the speech from him, let's say he was a younger man and heard the speech from an older man and said, "Hey, don't do this. This is what's going to happen to you." Obviously, it didn't work because he kept repeatedly going out driving drunk and then hitting obviously 3 crashes, but driving drunk many more times before that. So, sure. Is that effective? Is that an effective way to try to convince people or slow the rate of people driving while impaired?
I think it depends on kind of where their mind's at. In his case, he was convinced he wasn't hurting anybody else. And what turned him was he's in the hospital hooked up to everything you can think of, because they lost him several times at the crash. And his dad took a photo of his mom's hand on his arm.
Wow.
And his dad said you didn't affect anybody else. And here's your mom sobbing with her hand on you, and he never drank again. So it was, for him, it had to be personal.
Right. My guest is Janelle Lawrence. She's the author of the book called Healing Behind the Wheel, Navigating Trauma-Informed Traffic Safety. You can find a link to that book in the description of the show. You can order a paperback or the Kindle version of that book that I have in the description of the show. We were talking a little bit earlier about making lifestyle changes. Would it help to get a different car or get the crashed one fixed? Because wouldn't you be constantly reminded, if you had the one that was wrecked fixed, that you're driving again? Wouldn't it be a constant reminder of what happened? And would it be better to maybe purge that one and get something totally different?
Absolutely. It sure can. Especially if you have heightened issues versus I just can't get back in my car right now to I'm never getting in a car again, then having that opportunity to have something different is a great idea.
Yeah. And I'm sure that some of these people that are going through this process as well, whether they're a passenger victim or the driver victim, can go through this process of healing, getting better, seemingly getting better, but then all of a sudden, snap, something happens and they go back. Does that happen often or sometimes for people that are on this path, that they're going forward, but then are sprung backwards before that they can, it's the old 2 steps back before I can go forward again?
If they're really spending the time to get better on their 2 steps forward, then they're going to be okay. And maybe it's a half a step back, but not so much. So if they're trying to rush through the process, sometimes that does not work out for them as well as they think it might. So spending the time on the steps and really being honest with yourself on how you're doing, and having a mentor that's a friend that can say, well, you kind of were like, using your foot to stop the car from the passenger side while I was driving. So maybe there's still some issues.
Right. Anyone who watches local TV, they're bombarded with ads from accident injury attorneys who promise big checks for big wrecks. If someone has a crash and they call one of these folks and go through that process of a lawsuit or a settlement, and let's say they do get some kind of a check because they were injured, do the lawyers, are they helping that victim, or does that process leave more scars on that person, and they're almost a little bit worse off if they never called that lawyer in the first place?
I guess it would depend on the lawyer and how long this process takes. to get through it, it might deter them getting better because it just keeps going and going and going.
Yeah.
So really, I would think that would be an individual case.
But you haven't really heard much of that. I would think that. Yeah.
No, not yet. I haven't yet.
All right. Is your book more of a encouragement, or is it a step-by-step guide for people who don't know how to process what they're experiencing, or maybe it's a little of both?
So I'm going to say both. We definitely, at the beginning of the book, give everybody some space to say it's okay, what you're feeling is okay. And then about chapter 3, we start in, here are some resources to get you better. So here's some things you can try. And the more they read through, the more things they can find that might apply to them.
Does it help to go through the book several times? Do you get it all the first time when you read through?
You won't. I encourage you to mark it up, turn pages over, things that you might want to come back and look at again, and maybe things you could try that you haven't tried before or willing to. There's also resources to find support groups in different areas. So maybe you can find a group that's helpful to you, somebody to talk to that's been through the same thing.
Have you heard from somebody that went through your book and it has really helped them, and it's a real success story? Have you heard from those people, and what have they shared with you?
We have, and we've been given credit for having a multitude of resources when you might only want a few. So that was a good thing, that they could find something that they would like to try in there. I had a really nice email from a lady who drove her car again after a year. She hadn't been able to get back behind. She just couldn't do it. But she found enough resources and tried acupuncture, which was one of the things you could do, and it helped her get back behind the wheel.
So really, what you're saying is one technique that's in your book might work for somebody, but might not work for somebody else. So you can't really say, or can you, one technique is better than any of the others?
I can't. And that's how it started getting bigger and bigger and bigger, because as we talked to folks, things did not, work the same for some people. I would probably not go get acupuncture, but that massage was sounding pretty good. Or try meditation. That might be something I'd try, but maybe a support group, not so much. Mm-hmm. So that's really how it kind of just kept getting larger, was because we just kept finding more resources.
Do you have a favorite part of the book?
I think the beginning, just being able to talk to folks and tell them that what their feeling's okay. Lots of people do. People don't like to talk about it sometimes, but they're in the right spot. We're going to get them through this. And being able to do that is pretty gratifying.
Yeah, that sounds pretty nice. When is the new book going to be available, or is it just an updated version of this one?
No, it will be new, and it will be out in 2026 when we have all the research dialed into.
Okay. And is that also going to be available all over on the Amazon and all that everywhere else, right?
Yep, we'll keep it on that Amazon, you bet.
Perfect. Any other plans for other books or other writings or your work with Oregon Impact?
This is what we've got on the table now. We just work on one thing at a time. We're small but mighty group. And I think this is going to take a lot more research than our first book did. Yeah. And maybe have some uncomfortable conversations that we didn't have to have with the other book.
Yeah, that'll be interesting for you to go through that process, because that too could be somewhat traumatic for even somebody who knows all about this and is trying to go through it as well.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Well, I learned a lot from reading the book, and I appreciate you reading it, and I hope other people get a lot out of it.
All right. Well, thank you for having me. We appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you for your time.
All righty.
And again, if you would like to check out the book for yourself, I have the link in the description of this show. It's a lot easier. You could always search for Janelle Lawrence PTSD, and the book should, it should pop up. It'll be the Amazon version. It would just pop right up, and you should be able to get it that way as well. But I do think that people are traumatized. I still see crashes and incidents and stories and times in the helicopter that will never get out of my brain, ever. Now, am I traumatized? I can't move forward. No, I'm able to compartmentalize these things. I think what a lot of news reporters are able to do is put it away, deal with it later, or just not deal with it at all. And maybe it will all come flooding back to me at some point when I finally retire and get out of the news business. But those experiences from, like I said, covering Columbine and going to half of the funerals and doing all of those things, and then coverage of all kinds of different shootings and crashes. Honestly, in the helicopter when I was flying around, I think I averaged seeing at least one dead person a week, whether it was from a shooting or a crash or a fire or whatever. But yeah, that was about average to see that every single week. And does it take its toll on you? Yeah. You could probably ask any first responder. It's way worse because they are right there with these people that in some cases are dying or have just died. And so it must be much more traumatic for those folks. And I wonder how much this book might help them. But there are probably other resources that they have that all the first responders are exposed to be able to deal with any of these traumatic effects. And, it's just like different than war. War is its own thing, and a crash is its own thing. And so while it's nothing like, being in a crash is nothing like being in a war zone, it can have certain lasting mental effects that can affect you for the rest of your life. So I hope the book can help out some people and get them on their way. Anyway, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, shoot them my way. All my contact links are in the description of that show, as well as, again, that link to Janelle's book. Thanks for being here. Thanks for listening. And until next time, I'm Jason Luber, the Traffic Guy. Be safe, and as always, happy motoring.